topic is my topic is nationalist education movement in India as a critique of colonial education. So, uh, in this presentation explores how colonial education in India served British imperial goals and how Indian nationalists responded with alternative educational movements. It analysis the colonial education systems flow and nationalist vision for a truly Indian model of learning. So the next one is the colonial education system. It's codified by Thomas Macaulay's Minute, 1835, promoted English education over Indian knowledge systems, focused on clerical training for British administration, neglected mass and primary education. So, mm, the British introduced education in India to train a class of Indians who could assist in administration but remain mentally loyal to the British. So, however, this same education inspired Indian thinkers to change the colonial mindset and imagine a system rooted in national culture and self respect. The next one is nationalist critic overview. Seen as a tool of domination and decides to fold cultural alienation, utilitarian focus, and moral and spiritual empathies. So, the colonial educational system was designed to create a group of Indian familiar with Western ideas, but the cutoff from their traditions. The British ignored the needs of the rural masses and used education as an administrative tool rather than a means of social development. Then, cultural and intellectual alienation. So, English as the medium excluded Indian languages, created an elite cutoff from the masses. Macaulay minutes dismissed Sanskriti and Arabic learning. Gandhi called it a tragic blunder. Educated become strangers in their own land. So the colonial education alienated Indians from their roots. So the students learned more about Shakespeare's and European history than about their own heritage. Nationalists argued that this created an identity crisis, making the educational elite strangers in their own culture. Then, the utilitarian and job oriented focus. Purpose and produce Babu class the clerks and subordinates. Stressed creativity and technical education. Followed the downward filtration theory. Neglected rural and primary education. So the mass illiteracy. Then the goal was not to empower Indians, but to supply the British with cheap and obedient workers. This system killed the curiosity and imagination, discouraging technical and industrial learning, which was essential for Indians' economic process. Then, moral and spiritual avoid. So, education become materialistic and secular. So, it ignored Indian spiritual and ethical values. Then, it lacked character building and patriotism. Then, promote loyalty to empire, not the motherland. So, The leaders felt that the British system weakened Indian moral strength. It was materialistic and devoid of spiritual depth. The education should have built character and national pride, but the colonial education promoted imitation of Western ways and dependence on foreign ideas. Then the next one is nationalist response. So, aimed at national generalize, generation, built alternative models emphasizing cultural roots, education for life and livelihood, Swadeshi institutions. So, this nationalist readers organization began to establish their schools and universities to reclaim education as a tool of freedom, not subordination. So they emphasized indigenous languages, cultural pride, and practical learning. So the next one is reclaiming cultural roots. Rabindranath Tagore's Vishwabharati 1921, integration of Indian and Western learning, education in harmony with nature and art, Arya Samaj and Dev movement combined Vedic knowledge with modern science and promoted revival and modernity. So, Tagore believed that education should be joyful. So, Tagore believed that education should be joyful and in harmony with nature. His Vishwabharati promoted art and creativity and universal understanding. The Arya Samaj movement, on the other hand, reconnected students to ancient Vedic wisdom while teaching modern subjects, symbolizing the fusion of tradition and the progresses. The next one is education for life and livelihood. Mahatma Gandhi's Nai Talim Varda scheme 1937, craft centered learning, spinning, weaving, carpentry, mother tongue as a medium of instruction, focus on mind, body, and spirit development, education linked to village economy and self reliance. So, Gandhi's educational philosophy rejected the colonial model. He wanted children to learn by doing, spinning, weaving, farming, linking education with self reliance. This system combined intellectual, moral, and physical training and aimed to rebuild the rural India from within. So, uh, the institutional boycott and Swadeshi education. So, Swadeshi movement 1905 to 1908 and non-corporation 1920 to 1922. National Council of Education 1906, Bengal National College, Jamia Millia Islamia 1920, Muslim National University, aim education on national illness and under national control. So the nationalists rejected British controlled school and created their own national institutions. So these schools aim to provide patriotic and uh, culturally relevant, sorry, culturally relevant education. So, preparing students to serve their country rather than the colonial rules. Okay, then the final our conclusion. So, the nationalist education movements transformed um, education into a means of national awakening. They provide that learning is not national awakening, and they provided that learning is not just about literacy, it is about self respect, culture, and independence. These movements laid the intellectual foundation for a free and confident India. So that's it. Thank you.